Morning, Mr. Shepherd, Mr. Shamley,
Good morning. Good morning.
staff, all the different leadership that's represented here in the audience, the different department directors and visitors. I want to welcome each and every one of you to our series of meetings here this morning. How we usually proceed at these board meetings is usually start off with a prayer. This morning we'll start out with a prayer, and then we'll go into our Pledge of Allegiance. And then at that point, we'll call the different meetings to order. So it's good that everyone is here. You're always welcome. And so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and proceed. Mr. Chris Sexton will lead us in our prayer, and Angela Romero will lead us in our pledge.
Our Heavenly Father, we are thankful to live in this land of freedom and peace, to enjoy the many liberties with which this land is blessed. We thank Thee for the freedom of assembly, and we ask for Thy Spirit to bless this meeting today. Please bless Supervisor Shirley and Supervisor Shepherd, Supervisor Shamley with wisdom and the decisions that they need to make. Please bless the elected county officials and appointed department heads, that they will be diligent in their stewardships. We pray, Father, that Thou will bless this county with prosperity. And this we humbly ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sexton, Ms. Romero, for the prayer and the pledge. And now, gentlemen, before I call the first meeting to order, Mr. Shamley,
Yes, sir.
go ahead and give you the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to acknowledge a couple guests we have from my district, from the Sanders and Lupton areas. We have Ms. Johns and Delegate Smith right here. They came down to visit. We're going to take a couple field tours after the board meeting to show them some of the infrastructure that folks out in Vernon have built that they might be consider building up in their communities. And this is a good opportunity, and I just want to recognize them for making the trip. Thank you, sir.
Shamley. Mr. Smith, it's good to see you. It's always good to see leadership from the Navajo Nation. And we appreciate working together and trying to accomplish on behalf of our people, our governments. Okay, with that, gentlemen, let's go ahead and call the county's Public Health Services District meeting to order at this time. We do have a couple of items on the agenda. Item number 1, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Shirley. We request your discussion and possible approval of Intergovernmental Agreement ADHS 18-177674 immunization services that provide immunization-related services for Apache County in the amount of $50,000. This grant has been budgeted for in current budget and requires no matching funds.
Okay, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and motion to approve.
I'll make a second, Chairman.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve the particular item as presented. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous that we go ahead and do that, sir. Item number 2.
We request your discussion and possible approval of the agreement between Apache County Public Health Services District and the Arizona Local Government Employee Benefit Trust and the Rural Arizona Health Group Trust to provide flu and pneumonia vaccines and services. This is a new contract that we have. It's saving money for the trust.
Okay, gentlemen.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to go ahead and motion to accept.
A second.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve the particular item as presented. Questions, discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous that we go ahead and do this, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the Public Health Services District meeting.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. With that, the Health Services District meeting is hereby adjourned. Okay, let's go ahead and call the county's library district meeting to order at this time. We do have one item on the agenda.
Good morning.
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 Supervisors, board members.
Morning.
Discussion and possible approval to renew the agreement between the Arizona State Library Archives and Public Records and Apache County Library District to specify the role each institution will play in supporting the statewide database package from July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018. Our cost, which is based on county population, is $8,362.02. The Arizona State Library's Archives and Public Records contribution is $405,012 towards these databases. The assessed cost to the library district has been planned for in our budget.
Gentlemen.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve.
A second.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve the particular item as presented. Are there any questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous that we go ahead and do that. Yeah, thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the county's library district meeting.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous that we go ahead and do this. So with that, the county's library district meeting is hereby adjourned. Okay, let's go ahead and call the county's Board of Supervisors meeting to order at this time. We do have several items on the agenda, gentlemen. Item number one, Mr. Crosby.
Good morning, Supervisors.
Morning.
We would request that we do item number 2 first, as the public hearing needs to be conducted for both of these items. So we'd recommend that we move with number 2 first, allow the public to have their public hearing, and then hear the other item.
Okay. Gentlemen, you've heard Mr. Crosby. If there are no objections, to his recommendation to go with item number 2.
Sure.
Certainly, let's go ahead and do that. So given that, Mr. Crosby, go ahead. Item number 2.
Good morning, Supervisors.
Good morning.
I'll be handling item number 2, though it involves the same exact lots of land here. This is following a public hearing, discussion, and possible approval of a subdivision plat amendment allowing Carol Carter to amend the Wilderness subdivision plat, converting 10 lots into 2 lots. These lots, which is 32, 33, 40, and 41, will become 1 lot, and then lots 34 through 39 will be combined into another lot. Property is located near Vernon. The Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously approved the application on August 3rd, 2017 with the following condition: that this application be approved at the same time as the approval of the utility easement abandonment involving the same 10 lots. And of course, that item number 1 involves the easement abandonment. On these lots are so small that in the subdivision rules, she can't build a house on each of those lots. So it's almost, she has some useless lots. She can't build a house, can't put a septic tank on it. So she's wanting to combine these lots so she can build on there, make it useful. So that's what she's doing. After combining these lots, if the board approved the combining of the lots, there'd still be an easement running right up in the middle of it. which means you couldn't put her house in the middle of her lot because there's this unused utility easement right in the middle of it. So that's why these two applications are right together. So based on the planning and zoning unanimous approval, we recommend approval of this lot combination portion of it. The next agenda item will involve the utility easement.
Okay, gentlemen, we need to put to the side our regular board meeting at this time, and the chair will entertain a motion to go into a public hearing mode.
I make a motion, we enter public hearing.
Second.
Okay, with that, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So with that, gentlemen, we are in a public hearing mode regarding this particular item. I don't know if you want to elaborate any more, Mr. Crosby, or sir. And
Supervisors, Devin did a good job explaining this. I might mention that the only other easements inside those lots would be a greenbelt easement that basically separates the two lots that they desire to create. My item does not specifically mention that on the agenda, but I think it should be worth considering if the applicant wishes to abandon that greenbelt at the same time. I think that would be prudent. And Supervisor, you do have the drawing there on your backup, correct? You can see the 10-foot on each side of that property line would be that greenbelt, and we threw that out there as a possibility to abandon at this time also, but we'll let the public input on that.
okay, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a public hearing mode on this particular item. How we usually proceed at these public hearings is you have 3 minutes to address the board. If you wish to address the board on this particular item, you have 3 minutes. If you could come up to the microphone here, state your name, and then address the board on the particular item. I don't know if there's anyone here to address this particular item before the board at this time. We are in a public hearing mode. Going once. Sir, go ahead and come up here to the microphone, state your name, and then you've got 3 minutes to address the particular item.
Mr. Chairman, my name's Dan Muth. I'm the surveyor that caused this plat to be created for Carol Carter, specifically addressing the issue about the green belts. The green belt easements were created as a part of the plat. The plat mentions them as easements, but the CC&Rs call them green belt areas. It is our contention that these green belt areas were set aside for setbacks, building setbacks, if you will, so that property owners wouldn't build up against the property lines, thereby creating a burden on the neighbors. We made provisions for that with the combination by following the same scheme with the plat by setting setbacks with the new adjusted lot lines along the street. So at this time, we ask that the interior individual green belts on the lots being combined be dissolved so that the new green belt along the road and along the interior lot line could be created per the plat that we're asking the board to approve today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wanting to address the board on this particular item? Okay. I don't know if board members have any questions. Otherwise, going once, going twice, going 3 times. So with that, gentlemen, the chair will entertain a motion to get out of the public hearing mode and get back to our regular board meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to get out of public hearing mode, back to a regular scheduled agenda.
Chairman, I second.
Okay, motion and a second to get out of the public hearing mode and get back to our regular board meeting on this particular item. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous that we go ahead and do that. So with that, gentlemen, we're not in a public hearing mode anymore on this particular item. Let's go ahead and see if we need to take some action. Mr. Crosby, back to you. What's your recommendation?
Supervisor, we would recommend that for both items 1 and 2, the board approve both the lot combination and the amended plat, as well as the abandonment of the 20-foot utility easement and the other interior lot line greenbelt easements at this time.
Okay.
Supervisor, one additional comment, the greenbelt that splits the two resulting parcels you want to remain, correct? Correct.
Okay. If the board members, Mr. Shepherd and Mr. Shamley, don't object to combining items number 1 and 2, I guess we can go ahead and do that, gentlemen. What are your wishes?
I make a motion, we approve item number 1, the engineering department for the abandonment of the easements as they're referenced, and item number 2, the community development, the division plat map updates.
Second.
Okay, the two items have been combined, items number 1 and 2. We do have a live motion on the table to address both items per the recommendation of our county engineer, Mr. Crosby. Okay, now, are there any questions or discussion relative to the motion on the floor? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous that we go ahead and do this. So with that, items number 1 and 2 are hereby approved. Okay, item number 3, Mr. Wingard.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Item number 3 is discussion and possible implementation of the Apache County salary study, which would become effective on October 1st of 2017. Just a little history. The board directed staff to work with public sector consultants early in the spring to come up with a salary study for the employees of the county. For your information, we have 397 employees. The last time we had a salary study done for the employees was in 2002, 15 years ago. And anyway, as part of the study, the consultant looked at the Gila County, Graham County, Greenlee County, La Paz County, Navajo County, Santa Cruz County, the City of Eager, City of Pinetop Lakeside, City of Show Low, and Town of Springerville, and compared our employees to those employees. As the consultant did that, he found that 80% of all of our employees was found to be below the market as compared to those counties and those cities. So we went through and he did a study, compared our employees to the other employees and proposed new ranges. And with those ranges, made recommendations to raise employees to get into the new range. As a result, we found that 146 employees fell below the proposed minimum. As a part of the study, we have 90% of our county employees fall in the first quarter or first third of the pay range. And as part of the study, we have approximately 35 employees that have now reached the midpoint. So anyway, it's been a lot of back and forth and working on this salary study. And at this point, we're ready to recommend to the board that this be implemented and that the effective date would be October 1st.
Okay. Gentlemen? What are your wishes? Any comments?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the item, but But I believe there's some comments that need to be made from myself and others. I was alerted to right before the meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the particular item as presented at this time. There are questions and I need to discuss. So with that, Mr. Shamley?
One of the first items that was brought up to me was there was some issues with some of the job categories, and Mr. Whiting, the county attorney, has the details on that. I would prefer he cover that aspect. Chairman?
Okay, Mr. Whiting?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. In regards to the salary study as it affects our office, we've asked repeatedly for the HR department for Mr. Joy to remove a position. It's the position of Director of Victim Services. It was removed by the board in January of 2009. It was part of a federal lawsuit. We reached a settlement in regards to the agreement. It has not been removed, and we can't proceed until that's been removed. So if the board does choose to implement this study, what would need to be done is instruct Mr. Joy to remove that from the county rolls in any way, shape, or form. And we could do that, or we can table the motion and have him remove that. But either way, we can't proceed forward. And I can get into the details if you want me to, but we've requested repeatedly for Mr. Joy to remove that through email and other items. In fact, we were given what's called the Table 3, and it did not show the position. And then yesterday, we were alerted to the fact that that is still exists on the salary study that was published to the public with this agenda. So,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whiting. Mr. Shamley, is there anything else?
I understand that Sheriff Dedman may want to speak as well.
Okay, let me go ahead and defer to Mr. Shepherd first. Mr. Shepherd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess kind of couple things. I think one is that we've set up a work session, or plan to have a work session on this, and just looking at one element, I guess what would be, if approved, basically all we're doing is just implementing what the salary ranges are, but I'm kind of concerned as we move forward, because, comprehensively, we're just only changing one implement, and that's just the funding. The other is, I think it's long overdue that our HR policy needs to be revamped. Also, job descriptions need to be revamped. If we put this into play, how will that affect once we start to do the other two? And so, because one way to look at it is that we approved the salary and the funding. That's one, but without doing the job descriptions or amending the HR policy, and that comes at a later time, are we going to be brought forth to say that, my salary, job description has changed, so I require a little bit more pay? And so, again, I think looking at it one way or the other, it's more conducive if we make that recommendation to take that approach, other than just putting the numbers together. And I did get a chance to sit down with the consultant and Flagstaff, and again, they agreed that basically they were only, contracted to do one part without the other two, and might be good to get that information as we move forward. So my question is to Mr. Wingard, if this is approved by the board today, what does that mean basically effective October 1st? Does everybody jump into the range that's being recommended and going forward? And if such, does the approval go, when do you plan to do the rest of the components of this? Because 2002 was a few years ago, and I think that's something that might be needed as well if we bring up everything to current, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Wingard?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Shepherd. The way the salary study sits right now, it is a proposal from the consultant to raise the ranges of just about everybody in the county based on his comparisons to other cities and counties, and then also use a time and position factor. And with those two, he comes up with a new recommended pay for various people, not everybody, but
but a lot of people. If we were to go back and look at the job descriptions for every position in the county, the board would direct us to do that, and we would do it. The consultant says it would take him probably 6 months to look at every single job in the county, and then there would be additional cost to do that. As far as how it would affect the recommendations today, don't know quite how that would happen. It would just depend on if the job descriptions change significantly for a particular job, then it could change the pay. So it would be a whole other step. It would require approximately 6 months, and it would cost considerably more than what we paid for this part of it. But whatever the board would direct staff to do, we will do.
Okay. Do you have additional comments, Mr. Shepherd? Okay. Okay, Sheriff Detman.
Good morning,
Morning.
members of the board and staff and people in the audience out there. Good morning. Good to go before the board again this morning. I'm glad that we're doing this. It's long been overdue, but I would also ask the board that we look at some of these study, because some of our employees, we might have to shortchange these guys, because some were on for many years and we recently promoted them, and those are going to be affected also. So if we could allow to talk with the people that did the study and say, hey, what can we do for these affected people? And under my office, there's about 10 or 11 people that we may have to look at it and make some adjustment if we have to. That's what, according, if we can work with the board on it, I would really appreciate that, board members. So with that, these are my comments, and again, thank you, Mr. Wingard, for, getting the study done and, with the approval of the board. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff. Is there anyone else wanting to address the board on this particular item?
Mr. Chairman, one more comment if I could. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, as an elected official, I'm speaking for the department heads as well, to the degree, I think it's appropriate that we have a response on the record from either our county manager or maybe the board or our finance director, somebody who can speak to this and let us know if these salary study increases are going to be funded out of the department and the offices of which the increases are being, or if it's going to be funded by the general fund. Said another way, is it going to have an impact? For example, with the sheriff's office, are they going to have to pay the increase out of their budget, or is that going to be covered by the board, by the general fund?
Okay, Mr. Wingard.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The finance director, Ryan Patterson, and I have looked at all departments. There are some departments that have enough room in their budget to handle it, depending on the impact of the salary study. Some departments, the impact is not very large. Some other departments, it's larger. We have made accommodation in the budget to help the departments that don't have enough money in their budget to handle it, to add to their budgets so that it can be possible.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could then. With the sheriff here and with myself here, our budgets are two of the largest budgets. I can't speak for the sheriff, but I'm sure he wants to know what his is. I want to know if this is coming out of my budget as the county attorney's office, or if it's going to be covered by the general fund, specifically to my office. And then the sheriff can speak for himself if he wants to know that.
I think the comment, the response there, Mr. Whiting, was that I guess it's your budget where you can accommodate, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wingard. Otherwise, where you can accommodate, general funds will be used to help you to address the funding. Is that my understanding, Mr. Wingard?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I know specifically the sheriff will need assistance to implement the salary study in his office. He has the largest budget in the county, and he will need assistance. Mr. Whiting's budget did go up a little bit this last time. We'll take a good look at that. We'll work with him directly. We will not have this hurt a department where they can't operate. We'll look at each one of them and work with them individually. And like I said, we do have money set aside in the budget for this, and we will make sure that happens. If the board would like some kind of a final report after we do it, so we can show you exactly which departments we helped and which ones we didn't think need help, we could do that as well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wingard. Mr. Assembly?
Yes, sir. Chairman, thank you. Concerning this salary study, much of this information that's been brought up is, I think, new to all of us this morning, or new to most of us. The concern I have is that we've been kicking the can, so to speak, trying to get something on paper to even read since, I don't know, May or so. We have a lot of Deputy 1 and 2s, Road Worker 1 and 2s. Those folks need some help. And the longer we keep kicking the can, the longer they're not getting their help. And the longer we risk losing our talent and skill that is being built by the leadership over time to other places. And I guess I can't blame them if they can drive next door and pick up in the same position and have their experience acknowledged because somebody else pays better. We can't keep losing our knowledge base and talent. So with that, I personally feel that we need to rectify this, but I'm not going to go haphazardly forward either. With Mr. Shepherd hasn't, sounds to me, had all his answers that he's needed, and I did not know about Mr. Whiting's until this morning either. So I'd like to pull my motion, Chairman.
Withdraw your motion?
Yes, till we can. So I could, because I made a motion to approve. I'd like to pull it and table this item.
Mr. Shepherd?
Mr. Chair, do respect Mr. Shamley's position as well. I think, you know, we just got to refine tune what's here. Basically, that's the reason why I'm saying, you know, we need to take a look at our HR policy because of time and position. There's a lot of people that don't have any type of step. They don't get anything. And so these are the ones that have been here the longest for the county. If you look at it, you know, from day one when they first came on as a county, they may have started at some other position. But again, without changing your HR policies to accommodate and be flexible to recognize a lot of these, we're just putting numbers out there for different people that fit in the range. And, you know, again, the versions have changed so many times from the beginning to the end. I'm just not really comfortable with it. But certainly I think we can put this on a fast track to look at some of these recommendations as we move forward, because a lot of people need it. And going forward, certainly I can approve this. I do have HERF money that we've already accommodated and set aside to take the impact of the changes. But again, the general fund side of it is another portion that I don't necessarily really deal with other than myself having under general fund. But it doesn't impact my salary or anything like that, because we're salaried by statute. So, Mr. Chair, I think just to kind of give more direction, I think that's what I think we would need for Mr. Wingard to go forward and to bring some of these, because certainly we really need to see a lot of other components addressed, not necessarily looking at consultants, but within our own internal. And again, I think once we realize in each department head and supervisors kind of have a general idea on what their positions and their descriptions need to be, make those recommendations, and ultimately the board will make those approvals. And so, Mr. Chair, I, you know, also would maybe make some recommendations as to, even though we don't have a motion, how do we move forward with it is what I'm saying. You know, we just can't leave it, but we need to maybe put this on a fast track within 30 days, you know, and move it forward, because October 1st is just right around the corner. And hopefully we'd be not too far down the road from there, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Shepherd, relative to how we move forward, I had really hoped, gentlemen, that we go ahead and implement this particular study, at this time. Maybe Mr. Shamley can reconsider his motion. What I've heard, I think the monies are there. I think the staff, the board is willing to help the different departments implement the study that has been wrought. Mr. Whiting has a concern about the removal of a position. I don't see that as a problem. If it is a problem, Mr. Joy, you let us know, but I don't perceive it as a problem. And regarding position descriptions, Mr. Shepherd, I think we can take it by a case-by-case basis from what I see. I kind of doubt that we're going to review every 397 position descriptions. I think there are some positions, certainly I agree, that needs to be reviewed. And if we can rewrite, I think we can do that even after we have approved the salary study. But I think there are a lot of staff out there that we need to treat them fairly. We need to treat them squarely. I've always said as leaders, they're the ones who make us look good. They're the ones who accomplish working with us, working with the government and the people. And we need to treat them fairly and squarely. And that's what the salary study was about. Some of them are not up to snuff with the salary. And this salary study is going to bring them up to snuff for the majority of them. And that was the reason why I was very much looking forward to implementing it. I wanted to have it implemented a month ago, I believe it was. It's still lingering. And if you could reconsider, gentlemen, to go ahead and implement it, and then we can address your concerns as we continue to move along, working with the county manager and the human resources and the powers that be within our government. That would be my recommendation.
Chairman, I can reconsider that, and I will make a motion again then to approve the salary study, but with the Director of Victim Services removed, so we satisfy that court case. Apparently, he's been asked for several months to do that. We need to have a hard deadline, like tonight it's removed.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, if I may say so, I will have that removed after this meeting.
That's even before tonight, Mr. Shamley.
All right, well, yeah, it is.
And Mr. Chairman, just so the record reflects what was said here today, so I don't have to keep going down this road with Mr. Joy like I've done for years on all these different positions. That was Mr. Joy who said he'll have that removed shortly after this meeting. So the record's clear on that. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I've never withdrawn my second. However, again, there are other components I think we really need to put that on a fast track to move forward with, because again, just looking at the time and position, that didn't come up part of the recommendation by the consultant. This kind of came in afterwards. So again, to really fine tune and go forward, I do understand, yes, there are employees that are out there that benefit from it, but looking at it holistically, I would make that request to Mr. Wingard as part of his job, I guess, in going forward. And so, just take it
I can amend my motion.
and moving forward, Mr. Chair. So,
Mm-hmm. Did you second, Mr. Shepherd?
yes, sir. I never withdrew my second. So,
Oh, okay. Okay, so we do have a live motion on the floor, gentlemen, to go with this particular item. There has been an amendment made to have a position removed, and that will be removed right after the board meeting. Mr. Wingard?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I know we're going to be having a work session in the next couple of weeks. I think that'd be a good time to clarify exactly what we need to do as far as we're looking at the individual positions that Supervisor Shepherd has some concerns about. So we will definitely work with him and others, that whoever we need to make those changes. So it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wingard. Gentlemen, I don't know if there's any more questions or discussion on the particular item or the motion. Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous that we go ahead and do that. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Okay, going on to item number 4. Looks like we need to suspend our regular board meeting with this particular item. So given that, gentlemen, the chair will entertain a motion to have the board sit as the Board of Equalization to consider this particular item.
I make a motion, we sit as Board of Equalization.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so it's unanimous that we'll go ahead and do that. So we're now sitting as a Board of Equalization. I don't know if any body is wanting to address. Mr. Winger, maybe we can start out with you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, these two particular cases were heard by our hearing officer, Mr. Johnson, and he made the determinations that were included in your packet, and we would recommend that we support those determinations.
Okay, with that, we are sitting as the Board of Equalization. It's sort of like a public hearing, I suppose. I don't know if there's anyone out there wanting to address this particular item with the board sitting as the Board of Equalization. Earlier, we had a public hearing, and it's the same processes. If anyone wants to address the board on this particular item, with the board sitting as the Board of Equalization, come up to the microphone, state your name, and you have 3 minutes to address the board. Okay, going once. Going twice. Going thrice. Okay. Okay, gentlemen, I guess there's no one wanting to address the Board of Equalization here. So with that, the chair will entertain a motion to get back to our regular session, get out of the Board of Equalization mode.
I make a motion, we exit Board of Equalization, go back to regular.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous that we go ahead and do that. Okay, what needs to happen here now, Mr. Whiting?
At this point, Mr. Chairman, you can approve what was put forth, if that's what the board wants to do. There's nobody that's addressed the board, so you can accept those, or you don't have to accept those.
Okay, gentlemen, you've heard from Mr. Whiting. What are your wishes?
Motion to accept 2 items here listed.
A second.
Okay, motion to accept the 2 items that have been presented to the board. Questions, discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous that we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, item number 5, Mr. Wingard.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the number 5 is the consent agenda. We have items A, B, C, D, and E, and would recommend approval.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay. You do have a live motion. Don't know if there's any questions or discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous that we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, item number 6, Mr. Shamley.
Yes, sir. For item number 6, I'm requesting approval of a resolution recognizing fallen firefighters and emergency service personnel and observing October 7th, 2017, first Saturday in October, as Fallen Firefighter and Emergency Services Personnel Day. Mr. Miranda from Alpine is here. He's also one of our P&Z members. He actually promulgated this idea and wrote it, and I would ask that he could read it. It's short from the podium.
Okay. Mr. Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Shepherd, Supervisor Shamley. My name is Oscar Miranda, and I do live in Alpine, Arizona. I came to Apache County about 10 years ago, and I retired after as a commander for law enforcement in Pima County, and I did that for about 36 years. And when I came to Alpine, I realized that the fire departments throughout Apache County are not only prolific in what they do, they are also a community service kind of a department that provides services to their communities that go beyond just fighting fires. And I noticed that at least in Alpine and some of the existing counties, and especially in northern Apache County, that these folks did a lot of work that was just not firefighting. It came to mind that in 1981, the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland, created a memorial for fallen firefighters and emergency services personnel who died in the line of duty. And subsequently to that, in 1990, the United States Congress recognized that national memorial, recognized it as a national memorial in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Following that, in 2001, President George W. Bush approved a legislation that required that all federal buildings on that particular weekend, specifically on the Sunday of the memorial, that all flags be lowered at half-mast. As of today, we have lost 68 firefighters and emergency services personnel in the United States. Consequently, as a result of that memorial, it was recommended that we observed Fire Prevention Week that week, because that is probably the most opportune time to really take a look at things in our communities. The weather is changing, more fires are being built, and in reality what's happened is that 36% of fires that are attended to by firemen across this country, including Apache County, have to do with some sort of cooking or heating, primarily cooking. And so it stands to, in my mind, the opportunity to recognize the ability of these folks that go beyond just fighting fires and actually help our community. In Alpine, we are going to be recognizing a single firefighter who has distinguished himself or herself as being one of these community service members that provides not just fire and EMS, but also such things as community service as cutting firewood, transporting folks to doctor's appointments, doing different things that firefighters don't normally do. With that, I wanted to take a moment and first of all, read to you the resolution that I'm proposing. And the resolution goes like this. Whereas the United States Congress and the President of the United States have designated the day of the annual National Fallen Firefighters Memorial Service as a day to honor firefighters and emergency services personnel who have sacrificed their lives to save others by lowering the American flag on all federal buildings to half staff. And whereas an average of 100 firefighters courageously make the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty each year, including 19 firefighters who lost their lives in the Yarnell Hill fire in Arizona on June 30th, 2013. And whereas the events of September 11, 2001 brought national attention to the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices faced by fire and emergency services personnel on a daily basis. And whereas the Rodeo Sky Fire, Wallow, and the Cedar Creek fires brought awareness of the local sacrifices, hazards, duties, responsibilities that we as a community face and those faced by emergency responders. And whereas firefighters and emergency services personnel play an essential role in the protection of lives and property in our community. And whereas the National Memorial Service marks the beginning of the annual Fire Prevention Week observance. And finally, whereas it is of major importance that we increase our efforts to reduce deaths, injuries, and property losses from fire, let it be resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Apache County, Arizona, now calls upon all citizens of Apache County and upon all patriotic, civic, educational organizations in Apache County to observe the first Saturday in October, October 7, 2017, in recognition of the patriotic service and the dedicated efforts of our fire and emergency services personnel by lowering American flags on all buildings to half staff. The board encourages appropriate services, ceremonies in which all of our citizens may participate to honor fire and emergency services personnel, past and present, and who, by their faithful and loyal devotion to duties, have rendered invaluable service to our community and to its citizens. And let it be further resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Apache County further calls upon citizens of Apache County to remember all fire and emergency services personnel who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. And hopefully it will be adopted this date, 2017. Finally, I do want to invite the board, Mr. Sherman, Supervisor Shepherd, Supervisor Shamley. We are having a ceremony in Alpine for the Alpine Fire District on October the 7th at 11 p.m. It's a very short ceremony, but sweet, in order to recognize fallen firefighters across the nation and to identify the Fire Prevention Week, and finally to recognize the distinguished firefighter from that particular agency. And I surely hope that other districts, fire departments, fire stations across Apache County would do the same. I thank you for your time and commitment and allowing me to address this board at this time.
On October 7th, 11 p.m. or 11 a.m.?
11 a.m.
Oh, you said,
Yeah,
you said P.
Sorry, I'm a-
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Miranda. Okay, gentlemen, what are your wishes?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and approve the resolution was presented.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the resolution hasn't been presented on in this particular item. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous that we'll go ahead and do that. And thank you, Mr. Miranda. Yeah. Okay, item number 7, Ms. Romero.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board.
Morning.
Morning.
This item is for discussion and possible approval to combine precincts Puerco East and Puerco West into one precinct with the new name of Puerco.
Okay, gentlemen.
I make a motion, we approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve. Questions, discussion?
Just a quick reference.
Mr. Shepherd.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick note, I guess the reason for combining statistic-wise, what has resulted in making just one?
Ms. Romero.
How it would benefit, basically, is that your question?
No, you had Puerco East and Puerco West. Now there's only Puerco.
What's the reason for the combination, I guess?
Well, it used to be one, Puerco. I researched all the way back 2001, found a canvas, it was Puerco. Then the legislative district line actually came through when they redistricted, and it split Puerco into legislative 2 and 5. And that's the only reason Puerco became Puerco East and West. Currently, Puerco East and West is in one JP and supervisor district. They receive the same ballot. They attend the same polling site. So it just makes sense to just have them one ballot, one polling site, all the voters. And we're only talking, as of today, there's 27 active voters in Puerco West that we're servicing. So it makes sense to combine them into one.
Understandable. Okay.
No legal problems?
No, sir.
Okay, gentlemen, are there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. We'll go ahead and do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 8. I don't know, Mr. Shepherd, Mr. Wingard.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shepherd?
A couple meetings back, I did have this on the agenda and asked for it to be removed to work out the legal portions of it. And since then, our county attorney's office has ironed out a lot of the questions and said it's ready for approval on the service agreement between the Navajo Nation or the Navajo Nation Tribal Utility with the office in District 2, so we're ready to submit and approve the contract between Apache County and NTUA. And so I don't know if there's any other questions, but I do thank Mr. Joe Young and staff at County Attorney's Office for working on this. And again, it's just more of the legal part of it, the jurisdiction, the different liabilities that were in there. I do appreciate both entities ironing out so that we would have faster services there, up to 50 megabits there at the District 2 office. And so it's just enlightened preparations for possibly the digital library that could possibly be there in Ganado. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I do ask for your support in allowing approval for the service agreement.
Okay, gentlemen, the chair will entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the particular item as presented. Are there any questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Whiting?
I just want to thank Mr. Shepherd for being understanding with this. I know he had wanted to get this done a little bit earlier, and I know they're not here, but I haven't seen them if they're here, but Gabe Freeland and Flora Nez and also Julius Elwood were really good to work with, and so was the attorney for NTUA as well. And it's kind of the first big process that they've gone through on a more of a serious legal contract, and I just want Supervisor Shepherd to know we appreciated his staff working with us, and I want him to take back our thanks to those employees of his and also to NTUA. So they made it very easy to work with them.
Okay. I'm also very interested, Mr. Shepherd, so let us know how it works out. I don't know if there are any more questions or discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous, so we'll go ahead and do that. Okay. Item number 9, Mr. Wingard.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Number 9 is discussion and possible renewal of the Pioneer School Complex lease agreement between Northland Pioneer College and Apache County for the use of post-secondary education services. This lease has been in effect for many years and it expired July 1st, and we would like to renew it and have it end on June 30th of 2022. So we recommend approval.
Okay. Gentlemen? What are your wishes?
I make
For discussion.
my,
Motion, Mr. Shepherd. Mr. Shambley?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, motion and a second to go with the particular item as presented. Mr. Shepherd, discussion?
I defer to Mr. Shamley.
Okay, Mr. Shambley?
Okay, Chairman, members of the board, thank you. I first started inquiring about this item to Manager Wingert yesterday. Was my first opportunity. So one of my first questions I asked was, because it has the lessor, that would be us, listed as for maintenance, upkeep, etc. And I realized the importance of this university and these agreements to our community and the children that attend it. Mr. Wingert initially said that they took care of all the maintenance, and then when I pointed out the contract says we take care of all the maintenance, we went back and forth a little. And then when I go back to hone in, because it really wasn't an answer, the last set of agreements aren't even in this backup material. So I have no problem for the sake of our children moving forward with this item, but we need some clarification, because at one point, there's a 5-year gap in documentation here for agreements, but there's 2 letters from NPC asking the county to update and amend the agreements. we can't even see what the amendments were that took place. All I do know is that MPC themselves asked specifically to update the MOUs and to include recitals, terms, premises, rent payments, and utilities. But we don't have one of the agreements to even look at. And I noticed that we went from a rental system of $12.50 a month or $15,000 a year to nothing now as well. But the lessor is still responsible for the maintenance. So I understand that partially this is covered with the taxing district because we don't have a community college district in Apache County. But there's with those large gaps in this agreement, I would like some explanation before I could fully support it from Mr. Wingert.
Okay, sounds like we need to do some more work on the particular item, but otherwise, Mr. Wingard?
And Mr. Chairman, on page 2 of the agreement, it says under repair and maintenance, it says lessor shall at all times keep the premises in a fit and habitable condition and shall maintain in good working order all plumbing, electrical, and mechanical systems which are on and part of the premises. So it is our responsibility to maintain the building, but it does say here further on that any improvements, it says a lessee shall pay all expenses of remodeling the premises prior to lessee's use. So there's a little bit of confusion there. If they want to remodel it, looks like they have to pay for that, but we do keep it up and keep it habitable. As far as the other things, we can go back and try to find the information Supervisor Shanley's talking about. This is the agreement that they submitted to us. As far as the rent, that is our building. It's a secondary tax that supports the NPC program here in Apache County. So the intent is if they charged us rent, we would just have to provide them the money to pay us back, and that's why they don't pay us any rent, is because we provide the money out of a secondary tax for them to operate anyway. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we'd be willing to do whatever the board would like us to do.
Okay, gentlemen? Anyone else want to address the board on this particular item? Okay. We do have a live motion, so with that, hearing no questions or discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. It's unanimous that we go ahead and do that. So with that, the particular item is hereby unanimously approved. And now we have our friend, our very prestigious leader from the valley. Item number 10, Mr. Craig Sullivan. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
It's good to see you.
Nice to see you too, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. You're being way too kind. I appreciate that. But it was my pleasure to come up this morning. I wanted to visit with you just to thank you for your involvement in our association, for your connection with your colleagues from around the state that are all trying to work together to help you serve your constituents here locally and make county government better. It's often tall order, but I find that working together as an association can be very effective. And I just want to thank you all for being involved, including your management. Thank you, Mr. Wayne. I also want to stand before you to report out on some of the activities of the association over the last year and start teeing up that conversation for how we engage the next legislature. It's right around the corner, and we're going to have a lot of work to do. But to inform you a little bit, this PowerPoint is focused on what we've accomplished over the last legislative session and what we're working on going forward. Let me just, for folks who aren't familiar with who we are, the County Supervisors Association is a coalition of all 15 counties. We're a nonpartisan organization. Every supervisor in the state serves on our board of directors, and we're really focused on creating a forum for county supervisors and management to come together, talk about the issues that are impacting their community, identify best practices, and engage as a coalition the legislature and Congress, state agencies to help work in your interests. And you can see here the importance of intergovernmental engagement. We have several entities that are external of your operations that have powers and authorities that can impact what you do here. And you all know it very well. You're all very well connected and skilled in navigating the halls of Congress and the legislature, the court system, and of course the other elected officials. All of these external entities have the ability to impact your operations. So by coming together, we're able to use the influence and capability of the organization to advance your interests. I'm not going to spend a lot of time breaking down all of the various areas that we pursue in this regard, but I do want to commend to you, Mr. Chairman and members, we provided you our annual report, and it is worth your review at some point. It gives you a sense of all the different types of things we're engaged in and how we're trying to serve your county. I do view all of you as our client base, but as well the managers and your program professionals as they try to serve you as well. So we are always available to field questions, concerns, and items where we might be able to serve you. One quick item I did want to mention in this regard is related to what we saw with the EORP and PSPRS repayments. A county finance director and a manager called me about some of the concerns about the state not paying its share of the repayments to the Superior Court judge salaries. In hearing that, we were able to work out an agreement with the Department of Administration, the PSPRS Board of Trustees, to help pay you back some of those resources. So it just kind of highlights how we're always catching issues that you forward to us, and it's always our pleasure to serve you in that capacity. So please use us in that regard. You can see more of that in the annual report. I do want to talk largely about this past legislative session. When we met in Flagstaff last October, we set a very ambitious agenda on what we wanted to accomplish at the legislature, and I knew it was going to be very competitive in terms of available resources. So what I asked all of you to do, and I'm grateful that you engaged in it, was to help get the message out, to pass resolutions, write letters, talk to your lawmakers so they could see the credibility of the priorities that we were putting out there, and you all played a key role in that. So thank you. It really paid dividends when I got to the Capitol and lawmakers had already heard from you about what mattered. We also spent a lot of time engaging lawmakers in every forum that they gave us. This year there were 2 subcommittees on appropriations in the House. So I testified before those committees to make sure that our issues were first and foremost on their mind, and it paid off. Those subcommittees endorsed the county priorities and asked the full appropriations committee to accept those. Similarly, rural lawmakers got together this year as a rural caucus. They met every Wednesday over at the Department of Agriculture and talked about what was happening. And they invited me to those meetings to share our perspective. And I was very grateful for that because it hadn't been happening in recent years. So I think it really bodes well for the future at how the rural legislators are really coming together. Importantly, that rural caucus endorsed all of the county priorities as well and forwarded those to leadership. And that matters a ton because, as you know, when the deal's finally being done, the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the President, they go off and they negotiate a final budget. And if you're not on the table, and if various parties are not saying, I have to take something back to these legislators to show them that we're meeting county needs, then you're going to fall off. And we didn't fall off because of all the work you helped with in making sure that we were relevant and had to be in the final decision. So it paid significant dividends, and I want to break some of those down for you. These are the asks that we had, and we were able to secure in whole or in part everything that we went after. We received relief on the Department of Juvenile cost shift. We didn't get it terminated, the county fee, which was our goal. We were close, but ultimately it was an $8 million relief for the counties in that area. We maintained the in lieu lottery appropriation of $550,000 for your county and 10 smallest. We also were able to add to that Mojave, Yavapai, and Pinal, who had been carved out of that in lieu lottery money. So that's back in the budget, but it's only appropriated on a one-year basis, so we're going to have to keep fighting for it. And then HERF. The positive thing about HERF was that we were able to get a $10 million restoration, and importantly, that's dialed in as ongoing. So economy willing, we're not going to have to go fight for that $10 million again in the next budget. It's already dialed in. So we're able to target other resources as we go forward. And then flexibility language. We've been securing flexibility language for your county and several others. That, again, was contained in the budget. Very importantly as well, there was a proposal on the table to have all of the counties help fund some functions at the university system. We all value our universities, but we didn't feel we had to pay for it, and so we resisted it, and legislators did similarly. So you are not paying for that university bonding proposal that was on the table. The state is, the universities still got their money, but it's coming out of the state general fund. So all in all, I was very pleased with how we secured the objectives that we went after, and you can see how that breaks down across each county. Year in lieu lottery money maintained at $550,000, and then additional resources of $362,000. So when I reflected on this, the good news was we largely got what we sought, but the bad news is that this is money that was just stolen in the first place by the legislature. So we're clawing our way back, getting resources that belong to you, slowly but surely getting them back into your operations. We still have a lot of work to do. I wanted to share this with you, and I apologize to folks in the audience, a little hard to see, but I mentioned at the outset that this was a very competitive environment, and this shows you that. Of the new money that went out the door, overwhelmingly it went to education. But you'll note as well that there are two items that were unplanned for. One was the voters approved through Prop 206 changes to benefits and minimum wage. That became a significant cash outlay that the state now had to deal with, just as all of you did. And similarly, the state health employee trust fund required new resources. So when we set our strategic plan, we didn't know we were going to have to compete with the health insurance trust fund and with Prop 206, but by the time we got to the budget, we most certainly did. And so it really shows how it was a competitive environment, but the coalition effort really made sure that counties were treated in the final budget. This shows you how what the final numbers look like in the state budget. Look at the structural balance piece. In fiscal year 18, the state is expecting to have $21 million positive. They have a $10 billion budget. So that's really not, that's in a margin of error, that can easily evaporate. Small changes in the economy, small changes in cost drivers to the state can significantly impact their financial picture going forward. So our prediction is that we are going to continue to have very tight financial times at the state, and we're going to have to continue to fight for additional relief for the counties. Very briefly, I wanted to move on to the bill side of it. One of the services we provide is we track every bill in the system, and those that pass, we create a document that breaks down every bill by policy area and distribute it to your program professionals so they're able to get a sense of what they need to implement. And so I just wanted to point that out. The bills that fall in two categories. They were items we took to the legislature, which we call our proactive legislation, but overwhelmingly it's about reactive. What bills are put in the process. And you can see that here. If you look at the county relevant category, 423 bills had a county nexus. Many of them were not threats, but all of them could have been amended to be a problem. When I met with our colleagues at the cities, they were tracking about 240 bills. And so you can see the nature of county government is we really have to have a close eye on bills that are in the process. And that's one of the items I'm very proud of my team for accomplishing. These are the bills we took to the session. It's a little hard to read for the folks in the audience as well, but the key takeaways are we reauthorized the waste tire disposal program. That was a major priority. The lottery money, we had a bill, but we ended up putting that in the budget. And then on the bills that did not advance, we have been trying to elevate awareness about the need for greater transportation resources, greater investment. And so there was a bill to ask the voters to increase investment in transportation. It didn't pass. We didn't expect it to, but it was a format to talk about what's going on out there. And the real problem down at the State House when it comes to transportation is the Maricopa region's pretty heavily invested in, but in 14 other counties that I drive in, there's a significant need for more transportation resources. So we're going to have to continue to advocate for that going forward. These are some bills that became important to us. We didn't initiate them, but when we saw they were out there, we got engaged. The top bills are related to risk management. I won't get into the details of them, but you all are members of the Arizona Counties Insurance Pool. 12 counties are. And so when they're looking at workers' comp related measures that can help save you money, Bill Hardy calls me up and tells me to get involved. And these are 3 of the bills that we worked on this year in that regard at the top. Overwhelmingly, what we deal with are bad bills that we're concerned with. There were 27 bills that we didn't like, had significant concerns. 24 of them did not get to the finish line. They were either killed or amended favorably. Here's a laundry list for you. There are a couple items that I want to point out. Number 1, 2143. This was the effort by the general contractors to change the rules around what you outsource for road building and maintenance. It would have significantly hampered your internal capability to do road building and maintenance. You all participated in a coalition of rural counties and made a huge impact in educating your lawmakers on the problems with that bill. It died in the first about month and a half before it was heard in committee, and I just want to thank this county for the anecdotes you provided to us, because ultimately the rural members saw the lack of wisdom in advancing that bill. It can come back next session, so we're going to have to be prepared. As you move through some of these, you can see just 2179 and 2212 are just legislative micromanagement of county operations, no real constituent value, just bureaucratic burden on all of you. I did want to point out 2521. This is related to reforming prime contracting taxes. What this means is currently when construction occurs in your county, the prime contracting tax is collected and distributed in your county. The reform proposal is to move that incidence of taxation to the point of sale of the materials, where the materials are purchased. For rural counties like yours, that can have significant harm. That bill was defeated last year. My team spent a lot of time putting together some pretty good analysis on the exposure to the counties in that area. It's going to come back, and so we're really going to have to engage that, and I wanted to draw your attention to it. Here's a quick list of bills that were favorably amended. A few I'd like to point out. The civil forfeiture bill, which the county attorneys and the sheriffs had a lot of concerns with and were educating lawmakers about. We were neutral on the bill, but we focused on an amendment that would make sure that any mandate on the board was properly crafted, and so we were able to include that in the bill. Kristen Sapola and my team made that happen. And 1442 is the latest effort in reforming pension plans. So now the corrections officers retirement plan, where your detention officers are currently in a defined benefit plan, going forward, that's closed. Current employees are okay. Future employees will be in a defined contribution plan. So interestingly, probation officers are also in this plan. They continue to receive a defined benefit, but it is structured differently. So CORP is no longer all about corrections officers. It's in many ways about probation officers. So I want you to be aware of that as well. And we are continuing to be engaged with the pension system to try to manage some of the damage. It is profound from the failed reform efforts of the legislature, and we are regularly trying to figure out how to minimize some of that. But it's just become very overwhelming, and I'll talk about another piece to that in a moment. Here are some bills that passed. These are just micromanagement bills. The common denominator here is all of these bills failed and then were brought back around the time that the budget was being done. And so there are some small changes to your regulatory authority about home-based businesses that we felt were just unnecessary. There's some micromanagement when you're purchasing property that's within an incorporated area. And the legislature wanted to push all voting for new sales taxes when you put a measure before your voters to the November election. And so these were all items that were brought forward after they died and became part of the budget negotiations. So this is my quick summary page. I mean, I mentioned that we went after about $23 million for all 15 counties. We brought back $19.6 million, and you saw your share of that. The good part is that we darn near hit our mark, but as I mentioned, the bad part is this is our money in the first place. It's coming back to us the way it was stolen. And so we still have so much work to do going forward, and you can get a sense of the numbers of bills that we engaged. So my team and I have really shifted gears to move forward. And I want to share a little bit about our work plan that we're engaged in right now. We had a managers meeting last week. Mr. Wengert participated. We'll be talking to all of you at our board of directors meeting on Thursday as well. But just focus on the interim research section of this slide. And this is what we're working on. We have to do something about the ongoing shift to the state of a portion of the costs of the State Department of Juvenile Corrections. I participated in this over the summer in a regionalization task force with the Arizona Office of the Courts. What you all have done here locally was highlighted as a best practice in the reconfiguration of your juvenile facility. Great work in what you've done there, and many other counties were looking at what they might be able to do similarly. I have been assigned to an ad hoc committee by the legislature to review the future of the Department of Juvenile Corrections, and that's going to begin October 10th. We are also working on the roadway needs study. The engineers have convened that study again, and we're reviewing the draft, providing input. We intend to use that as part of our advocacy to promote more investment in rural road building and maintenance. And we continue to be engaged with the pension piece. Last week, I testified before the Board of Trustees about the EORP crisis and made a very clear point that shifting the costs of that is not an acceptable result to the counties. As you know, the legislature reformed EORP many years ago, but as a consequence of that reform, the system is largely insolvent. And one solution brought forward is just floating the contribution rate and shifting the cost to the counties. I can't remember the exact number on that, but I think it's north of $300,000, maybe up to $500,000 for this county. We'll get new numbers soon. But we're really going to have to work on that and oppose any new shifting in that area. And I wanted to talk briefly about the county financial analysis piece that we're working on. My team spent the summer collecting data. We've developed a very broad database of tax collections and other metrics over time. And what we're trying to do is just look county by county about what's happening out there financially. What's our structural picture look like in terms of expenditures and revenues? What kinds of cost drivers are really causing budgetary difficulty for you? Things like pensions, things like health care, things like all tax. And so we're just trying to get a bead on all of those items that are occurring out there, because we have to do our best job at educating legislators of the big squeeze that is occurring as a confluence of state policies on county operations. And so you'll see a little bit more of that on Thursday as well, and Mr. Wengert's been plugged into it over this summer. So there's a lot going on, but we really have to get organized for the next session. Please make plans to participate in our legislative summit It's in Maricopa County this year. We have, beyond our financial priorities, we have 2 items that are on the table coming out of Apache County, one related to primitive roads and road maintenance, and one related to veteran service officers. So those are in the pipeline, and we really look forward to serving you in that capacity. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for all the time. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sullivan, for all the work that you do. We just really appreciate you, the team. Gentlemen, are there any questions or comments relative to what Mr. Sullivan has reported to the board, to the public here? Okay. Mr. Wingard?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to express my appreciation for Craig and his team down there in the valley. They're doing a lot of work, especially with analysis on the finances. It's very helpful to all the counties. Just appreciate the good data that we get that helps us try to manage here at home. So appreciate that, Craig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really do appreciate it, sir, that you're there, going to bets on our behalf.
It's really our pleasure to serve you. And if I may, I just want to offer one other point. You all have a contract lobbyist who works with you to work on your out-of-county tuition issues and other specific bills that are important to you. And I just want to extend my appreciation to Mr. Aarons and the Aarons Company, because he's always calling us to ask how he can chip in our coalition effort to support Apache County. And so I want to extend that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan, and do have a safe trip back.
Thank you.
And we'll see you Wednesday and Thursday, I guess.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay, with that, gentlemen, item number 11, Mr. Wingard.
Yes, number 11 is notification of the Eastern Arizona Counties meeting on September 20th at 3 p.m. at the CSA building. And then the Small Counties Association meeting at 5:30 at the same location the same day. And then the next day, September 21st at 10 a.m. is the regular CSA board meeting. So just notification of those meetings, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And then item number 12, how we usually proceed here is I get notification as to who's wanting to address the board on this particular item. Being that I didn't get no notification of who's wanting to address the board, so we're through with the gamut of our agenda. So with that, gentlemen, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman, to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. With that, gentlemen, the board meeting is hereby adjourned.